Seoul, a city of millions, completely unaware that their time has officially run out. Life moves at its usual frantic pace, but the invisible countdown has already reached zero. In a single heartbeat, the mundane reality of the capital is shattered forever. A blinding flash of light tears through the horizon, turning day into a hellish white void. The pillar of fire rises, consuming everything in its path with indifferent fury. This isn't a drill or a movie. This is the absolute end of the world as we know it. D-Day. A nuclear missile has directly hit the heart of Seoul, and humanity just lost its home. But for me, the story didn't start with the explosion. It started 3 years ago. I'm Park Q, and I'm the only one who saw this coming and actually did something about it. While the ultra-rich were busy building luxury vaults, I had to find a more tactical way to stay alive. I didn't have billions to blow, so I had to be smarter and faster with my preparations. I liquidated every single asset I owned, turning my entire life into a bag full of cold, hard cash. Every waking moment was dedicated to one goal: acquiring the knowledge and information to live through the fallout. I studied blueprints, survival tactics, and engineering until my mind was as sharp as a blade. My first mission was the most critical: finding a site for my shelter that hit all the tactical requirements. It needed to be remote enough to avoid the initial panic, yet still connected enough to scavenge the city later. Terrain was everything. I needed high ground, natural defense, and total seclusion from prying eyes. And most importantly, I had to achieve all of this within the strict limits of my remaining budget. I finally found it, a perfect patch of woodland that checked every box on my survival list. It sat right below an Air Force base on the outskirts of the metropolitan area, the perfect tactical location. Moving to the countryside brought a different set of problems, mainly that peculiar territorialism of the locals. Old Man Kim, the neighbor, didn't hide his disdain for a city boy like me moving into his territory. He watched me like a hawk, his eyes full of suspicion as I started moving the heavy equipment in. I ignored the glares and began the construction. I didn't just hire workers, I got my hands dirty with them. The crew was skeptical at first, wondering why a young guy was building something so reinforced out here. But a few rounds of drinks and decent meals go a long way in turning skeptics into a dedicated crew. I broke their walls down, and soon enough, the project was moving at a record pace. Old Man Kim, however, wasn't so easily bought. He kept showing up, screaming about permits and noise. He was a constant thorn in my side, obstructing the project with no clear reason other than his own bitter temper. My foreman was losing his patience, ready to handle the old man with force to keep us on schedule. I stepped in before things got violent. I needed results, not a local police investigation. I told them I'd handle the old man personally. I had a world to prepare for and no time for a feud. That's when I saw the real source of the old man's misery: a sleek black car pulling into his yard. A man stepped out, looking like he belonged in a corporate office, not a dusty country road. It was the old man's son, and he wasn't there for a friendly visit. He was there for the land. He grabbed his father by the collar, his face twisted with a greed that surpassed any neighborly grudge. He was screaming about his inheritance, demanding the land be signed over so he could sell it off. He didn't care about his father's life. He just wanted to flip the property and get back to the city. I watched from a distance, realizing that family ties mean nothing when the world is already rotting from within. He shoved the old man to the ground, leaving him gasping in the dirt like he was nothing but an obstacle. The son stood over him, demanding an answer, while the sun began to set on their broken relationship. I stepped out of the shadows, making my presence known with a quiet cough that broke the tension. The son's bravado faltered for a second, startled by someone actually watching his pathetic display of entitlement. He let out a final hollow threat before storming back to his car, leaving a trail of dust behind him. I walked over to the old man, who looked smaller than ever sitting there on his porch. I didn't offer him pity or empty words. I just offered him a single cigarette. We sat together as the sky turned a deep orange, two strangers linked by a piece of land and a coming storm. He asked if I had parents. I told him the truth. They were gone long ago. He looked at my construction site and finally started to explain why he held on so tight. He told me about his wife and how this land was the only thing left that held her memory. He couldn't sell it, no matter how much his son begged or threatened. It was his last anchor. I left the cigarette on the bench and walked away, letting him sit with his memories in the quiet evening. I'm still not sure if I did the right thing, but that one talk changed everything between us. It opened a door that had been slammed shut for years, and the harassment finally stopped. D925. The interference was over, and the bunker slowly began to take its final, reinforced shape. D581. I spent my days working the land alongside him, blending in while the world stayed oblivious. D21. The countdown was nearing its end, and the peace of the countryside felt like a lie. D3. The air grew cold and heavy, a final silence settling over the woodland. I was ready. My shelter was complete, stocked with years of supplies and built to withstand the end. Then the clock hit 0. D-Day arrived with a vengeance that shook the foundations of reality. I felt the vibration deep in my bones before I heard the sound, a deep, primal thud of impact. The sky turned a sickening shade of red as the first shockwave hit the outskirts. Finally, the air raid sirens started to wail, a useless, belated warning for a world that was already dead. I was deep inside the bunker when the pounding on the steel door started. It was Old Man Kim. He was frantic, his eyes wide with a terror that no human should have to see. He was begging me to find his son in Seoul, convinced that somehow I still had the power to help. I turned to my monitors, watching the news feeds flicker out into static one by one. I looked him in the eye and gave him the only truth left. His son was gone. Seoul was a graveyard. The city was erased. There was no one left to find and no way to go back. I told him a second wave of airstrikes was coming and offered him a spot in the bunker, but the old man just shook his head. He wouldn't leave his home, even if it was a target for the next wave. He thanked me for the offer and walked back into the crimson light, his choice finally made. I watched him on the perimeter camera, a lone figure waiting for the inevitable end of his story. He chose to die with his memories rather than survive in a hole in the ground with a stranger. The first explosions were just the beginning. The real nightmare was only starting to unfold. I reached for the handle, my hand steady despite the chaos screaming outside. The bunker door hissed shut, sealing me away from the dying world and the ash-filled air. From this moment on, the rules of civilization are buried. Survival has no room for sentiment, because in the apocalypse, anyone who survived is now an enemy. The world is blissfully unaware, but the countdown to the end has already started. I'm out here with Old Man Kim, practicing for a reality no one else wants to believe in. We're tracking a boar, but we're really training for the hunt of a lifetime. Kim is a crack shot, a former National Guard member with plenty of stories and a lot of pride in his skills. He trusts his vintage rifle, a Walter D.M. Bell. It's a fine tool for a simple hunt, but it's an antique. It won't be enough to survive the chaos that's about to drop from the sky. My focus is elsewhere. Just beyond these fences lies the Gyeonggi-do Air Force Base. It's a joint ROKA and U.S. facility, heavily fortified and packed with military hardware. When the first strike hits, that place will be ground zero for panic. They have specialized anti-monster units and hunters stationed there, but even they won't be enough to hold the line. My plan is simple. Wait for the confusion of the nuclear strike, suit up in radiation gear, and strip that base of every military asset I can carry. But to get there, I needed serious firepower now. I reached out to a man named Kim Wang-soo. On the surface, he was just a construction lead I hired to build my shelter. In reality, he was a gangster with deep ties to the underworld. He knew where to find the things the government doesn't want you to have. The day of the trade arrived. The air felt heavy, like the sky knew the world was about to break. I didn't go in blind. I'd run a full background check on my partner before agreeing to meet. Wang Su wasn't just a local thug. He was ex-Shanghai Triad, a professional who knew how to move illegal hardware across borders. He arrived early, looking calm and checking his messages while the sun dipped below the horizon. I kept my distance. You don't get close to people like him unless you have a death wish. He told me his guys were just a few minutes away with the delivery. All I wanted were the guns. The less talk we engaged in, the safer I felt. He spent the wait showing me pictures of his 7-year-old daughter on his phone. He laughed, talking about her personality, trying to act like a normal father. But I knew better. Then the headlights cut through the dusk. The truck was here. They didn't waste any time. The crates were heavy, and the men handling them looked just as rough as the boss. 3 Type 56 rifles, chambered in 7.62 millimeters. Rugged, reliable, and exactly what I needed for the apocalypse. I checked the action on each one. They were clean, well-maintained, and ready for work. But as the transaction ended, Wang Su's tone took a sharp turn. He started talking about how hard it is for a person to live alone in a place as big as my shelter. The air turned cold. He wasn't just making small talk anymore. He was making a threat. He reached out, his hand lingering on the crate, testing my reaction. He was looking for a weakness, wondering if he could take more than just my money. He thought he saw an easy target, a young guy with a high-end bunker and no backup. I asked him straight up if there was a problem. He looked at me with the eyes of a man who'd already decided I was a victim. For a long second, he just stared, weighing his options and calculating the risk. Then he laughed it off, flashing that fake wide grin again to ease the tension. He told me to come find them if I ever got lonely, mentioning his workplace and his daughter one last time. But I knew he wasn't joking. In the new world, violence is the only currency that actually holds its value. The sirens were blaring. The world was finally ending, and the sky was stained a deep, warning red. Safe inside my bunker, I waited for the inevitable. I knew he'd come back for what I had. My phone buzzed. It was Wang Su. He was at the gate. He claimed he was bringing me ammo and magazines I already paid for, acting like everything was normal. He was right outside, alone according to him. I didn't believe him for a second. I looked at the monitors and prepared myself. I watched him through the security feed. He moved with the confidence of a predator entering a cage, but he wasn't carrying ammo. He was carrying an axe, and his intentions were written in his posture. He thought he could sneak in while the world was falling apart outside. He moved through the dark, thinking he was the one in control of this situation. I answered the call, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. I told him exactly where to go, luring him into the spot where I'd have the advantage. He charged as soon as he saw me, thinking he had the element of surprise on his side. He swung that axe with everything he had, the blade whistling through the air. But I wasn't where he expected me to be. I'd already anticipated his move. I had to end this while it was still one-on-one. I couldn't risk him getting a second chance. One wrong move and I'm the one in the dirt. In this world, hesitation is a death sentence. He thought he was the predator here. He thought I was just some kid with a big house. He was wrong. I was ready for him long before he even stepped onto my property. He lunged again, blinded by his own greed and desperation. I stepped inside his guard, moving faster than he could track in the dim light. The impact was sickeningly solid. I didn't give him an inch of room to recover. He let out a choked gasp as the steel bit deep into his shoulder. I didn't stop. In a fight for survival, there is no such thing as mercy. He fell hard, the blood pooling quickly on the cold, unforgiving ground. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a sudden, desperate realization of his own mortality. He asked what I was. A soldier? An agent? He couldn't believe he'd been beaten so easily. It didn't matter what I was. All that mattered was that he was finished, and my shelter was still mine. He grabbed my leg, begging for his life with a mouthful of blood and broken promises. He pleaded for help, the once feared triad member reduced to a sobbing wreck in the dirt. I told him it was too late for that. He made his choice the moment he brought that axe. He was gone before the sirens even stopped. Just another corpse in a world that was about to be full of them. As I stood over him, his phone started ringing again, the screen lighting up his dead face. Beautiful daughter. An international call from a world that didn't exist anymore. I looked at the screen, the light reflecting off the gore on my hands. A text message popped up. "Dad, come home soon." It didn't change anything. Survival doesn't care about your family. 29 days later, the world is a wasteland of dust, radiation, and silence. The radiation levels have finally dropped enough for me to leave the bunker. My real mission starts now. I gear up, checking my equipment one last time. The air is toxic, but I'm ready. The rifles I bought with blood are packed and ready for the road. They're my only friends in this new reality. I head out into the gray light of the post-apocalypse, driving through the ruins of civilization. The streets are littered with the remains of those who weren't prepared for the end. I see them slumped in their cars, frozen in the exact moment the world broke around them. I still think about Wang Su sometimes. I wonder if he would have survived if he hadn't tried to cross me. If he'd just taken the money and left, maybe he'd be with his daughter right now. But looking at the total devastation around me, at the dead cities and poisoned air, probably not. In this world, even the strong get buried. The Air Force Base is just ahead. If my plan worked, I'm about to become the best armed man in the wasteland. The path ahead is paved with corpses, and the real monsters are only just waking up. It's time to see what's left. A steady hand and a sharp needle. In the middle of total chaos, someone is still trying to create something soft. I sit in the dim light of my bunker, watching this screen as if it's a lifeline to a world that no longer exists. But this video isn't a relic from the past. It's a live broadcast from the community I've joined to track the end of days. The man on the screen, Anonymous337, is showing us how to make a wool doll for his daughter. It's a bizarre sight, a moment of domestic peace while the world outside burns to a crisp. I find myself staring, wondering if that kind of innocence can even survive another week. Exactly 1 year has passed since the war began. The sky is a permanent shade of bruised orange, and the cities are nothing but concrete skeletons. The nuclear strikes have stopped, but the silence that followed is even more terrifying. Something else took over, nightmarish entities with a reach that extends across the entire region, claiming the ruins as their own. Massive, multi-limbed horrors now tower over the skyscrapers we once called home. The government is gone. Law is a memory. Daily life has been replaced by a desperate tactical struggle for every breath. On the Viva Apocalypse bulletin boards, the talk isn't about recovery anymore. It's about the growing tide of refugees turned into predators. Trust is a luxury no one can afford. Even online, you have to be careful who you interact with. Then there's the human hunter, a user who goes by the name Defender. He doesn't post survival tips, he posts trophies. He shares verification photos of his kills, treating the apocalypse like a private hunting ground. I blocked him months ago. I didn't want his brand of madness polluting my screen, but the curiosity of a survivor is a dangerous thing. Blood and violence are the only languages left for some. Defender speaks them fluently. He claims his kills are warnings to stay out of his territory, but looking at his recent posts, it's clear he's just addicted to the act itself. Watching these monsters operate in real time forces you to become defensive. It turns your heart into a fortress. And then, the one person I actually enjoyed following went silent. Day 395. Winter has set in, turning the wasteland into a freezing white hell. The boards are filled with people asking for proof of life. Long-term members are disappearing every single day. I keep my eyes on the perimeter. In this weather, hunger makes people bold and desperation makes them stupid. I can feel it in the air. A shift. Someone is close to my sanctuary. I recognize the faces on the cameras. It's Director Hong and the crew who actually helped build this shelter. They've traded their tools for rifles, becoming a group of raiders who hunt their former clients. They think they know the layout. They think they're the ones in control of this visit. I check my armory. If they've come all this way to find me, it would be rude not to show them what I've been working on. I've spent a year turning this place into a death trap. Now I finally get to test the reinforcements. I pick up my axe. I won't waste bullets on rats unless I have to. The raiders confirm the location. They remember the underground theater project that served as my cover. They notice the entrance is already open. One of them worries it might be a trap, but greed usually wins over caution. Hong orders two of his men, Mingyu and Hyunbom, to head in first. He's the type to let others bleed for him. They move into the darkness, shields up, guns ready. They think they're being tactical. The first thing they catch is a scent, not of death, but something else. They find a crate of cigarettes, the perfect bait for a group of men who haven't had a luxury in a year. While they're distracted by the jackpot, I drop from the shadows above. Gravity is a hell of an ally. A single heavy blow sent one of them sprawling. They never even looked up. Chaos erupts in the narrow corridor. Muzzle flashes light up the room, but I'm already moving. That's one down. My heart doesn't even skip a beat. This is just survival math. The second raider tries to recover, but he's out of his depth. I pin him down before he can even scream for his friends. The shield he brought was just a coffin lid. The axe comes down, efficient, quiet, final. The man begs for his life, his eyes wide with the realization that he picked the wrong house to rob. I don't feel anger, I just feel the cold necessity of the world we live in now. Outside, Hong is shouting for an update. He hasn't realized his advance team is already gone. I step back into the deeper shadows of the storage room. Now for the remaining three. Hong is smart enough to be scared. He tells his men not to rush in. He wants to smoke me out. He orders them to throw tear gas into the ventilation shaft. He thinks he knows where it leads. I watch him through the monitors. He's playing by an old playbook, and he's about to find out I've rewritten it. I can't help but smirk. This isn't just a house, it's a machine, and I'm the operator. The gas hits the vents, but the air doesn't reach me. I redirected the flow months ago. I emerge from a side hatch with a rifle. It's time to end this little reunion. They have no idea I added secondary tunnels. I'm behind them before they even finish throwing the canisters. I step out into the snow. The hunter becomes the prey in a heartbeat. I open fire. It's over in seconds. The snow turns red as the rest of the crew drops. I close the gap, my rifle leveled at the last man standing. His bravado is gone, replaced by pure terror. I don't pull the trigger immediately. There's something I need to know first. He starts babbling, surrendering before I can even ask. He's pathetic. I press the barrel against his forehead. I want to know about the others they've raided. He tells me there were 5 of them. He's hoping that honesty will buy him a few more minutes of life. I make him start loading the bodies of his friends into their own truck. Waste not, want not. He's shaking so hard he can barely lift them. He's realized that I'm not just a survivor, I'm something else. I stop him when I see something fall from his pocket. A small, stained object. My blood runs cold. It's the wool doll from the video. The one Anonymous 337 made for his daughter. I grab him by the throat. My calm is gone. This is personal now. I demand to know what they did to the man who owned this, if they killed a father just for a few cans of food. He swears they didn't kill him. He says the old man was already dead when they found the place. I look at the doll in my hand. It's a small piece of light in a world of darkness, and these vultures try to snuff it out. I throw him into the snow and tell him to get in the driver's seat. He's going to take me to that shelter. The drive is short, but the silence in the cab is heavy with the promise of violence. We arrive at the bunker from the video. It looks exactly like it did on the screen, only now it's a tomb. I step inside, and the first thing I see is a body. The defender's verification mark is right there. I'm not alone in the dark. Someone is waiting. Someone who enjoys this. I see the man in the white jumpsuit, the human hunter. He thinks he's found another trophy. He's wrong. Another one down. In this world, if you aren't the hunter, you're the prey. There's no room for mercy when your life is on the line. This wasn't a clean fight. It was a message, a reminder that my sanctuary is not a public park. 2 bugs cut loose. I left a simple calling card, Defender. Let the others know that this territory is already claimed by someone who doesn't miss. People think death is the end of the story, but for me, it's just the beginning of the intel. You can learn a lot from what's left behind. A corpse contains more information than you'd expect. It's a tactical log of the victim's final moments, the angle of the entry wound, the lack of defensive marks. It all points to a perpetrator who knew exactly what they were doing. But it's okay. I'm not relying on just one source to map out the threats in this area. There's plenty of other sources. The streets are paved with the mistakes of those who thought they were top of the food chain. Information is overflowing in the ruins. You just have to know how to read the carnage. Every survivor has a different attitude toward death. Some fear it, some embrace it, and some, like me, use it as a tool. When you've seen the end of the world, a single life starts to feel like a very small thing. This guy thought he could buy his way out. He thought doing a few favors would erase the fact that he's a raider. The desperation in his voice is pathetic. He's begging for a life he already forfeited the moment he stepped onto my land. He's shouting about his children, his reasons, his necessity. Everyone has a story, and most of them are lies. I never had any intention of letting raiders live, especially not the ones who know exactly where my home is located. A secret is only safe when the people who know it are buried. It's a simple survival equation.
He tries one last excuse, but I've heard it all before. Someone else already used that line, and they're just as dead as he's about to be. I added another corpse to the tally and left the area. No point in lingering where the air smells like copper. After being stuck in the bunker for so long, even the toxic air of the wasteland feels precious for a moment. Standing out here, soaking in the sunlight, it's easy to forget that the world has already fallen. But in this reality, every moment of peace is a trap. If you let your guard down, you're dead. The sound of rotors cuts through the quiet. A drone. The eye in the sky is always watching. The online community boards are filled with stories of people being hunted. Users like Dongtan Mom post their survival diaries, not realizing they're providing a map for the predators. The raiders are evolving. They aren't just using clubs and knives anymore. They're using technology to find their next meal. Vital information for one person is a death sentence for another. The community is starting to realize the stakes. Every screen and every dark room is a window into a world where the weak are being systematically erased. If you don't have the means to fight back, you don't have a future. It's that simple. The realization is spreading. People are panicking, trying to find safety in numbers. But groups are just bigger targets. They're loud, they're slow, and they're easy to track. My thoughts are completely different. I don't need a group. I need to be invisible. Armed conflict is the last resort. The goal isn't to win the war, it's to never let the enemy know the war has even started. In that sense, my territory is the best spot. It's desolate, radioactive, and completely uninviting.
The mutated wild dog packs act as my natural border security. They don't take bribes and they don't ask questions. Then there's the city. Rumors of radioactive zombies keep most wanderers away from the urban centers. But there's something else out there. A survivor who knows how to handle a long-range rifle. I've seen the work. Precise, cold, and efficient. This person isn't a scavenger. They're a professional. Meanwhile, a group of raiders is nearby, frustrated that their drone can't find anything worth looting in the open fields. They're looking for me, but I'm a ghost. All they see is empty land and ruins. They start bickering. Greed and incompetence are a lethal combination in the apocalypse. They're worried about the cost of gas. They want a payoff, and they're getting desperate enough to take risks. If they don't find something soon, their little coalition is going to fall apart from the inside. But then the drone operator spots something, a change in the routine, a new variable. He zooms in. It's not the target they were looking for, but it's something better. A woman in military gear. She looks like a US soldier, or at least she's wearing the uniform. The raiders' eyes light up. They see good prey. They don't see the threat staring them right in the face. They decide to change their destination, a fatal mistake. They're heading straight into a trap they didn't even know existed. Before they can even move, the border patrol arrives. The mutated dogs don't care about their plans. Panic sets in instantly. These guys are used to bullying defenseless survivors, not fighting apex predators.
Blood sprays across the windshield. The reality of the situation is finally sinking in, but it's far too late.
They scream to step on the accelerator, but the pack is already on top of them. There's no escaping this. The dogs are relentless. They don't just kill, they tear apart everything in their path. The driver is losing control. The screams from the back of the truck are the only sounds left in the air. They aren't even looking at the road anymore. They're just trying to survive the next 5 seconds. A sudden impact. The glass shatters as the world spins out of control. The truck slams into a pole. The hunt is over, and the feast is about to begin. Silence follows the crash. The raiders who thought they were the predators are now just a pile of meat. One of them is still alive, staring into the dark with wide, terrified eyes. He looks up and sees the face of his end, a mutated beast with glowing eyes and a hunger that can't be satisfied. He tries to reach for a weapon, but his body won't obey. The growl of the dog is the last thing he'll ever hear. The pack moves in to finish the job. No witnesses, no survivors. A week later, the report hits the forums. A crashed truck, blood everywhere, and no sign of the bodies. Just another Tuesday in the apocalypse. I'm back at my monitors, watching the chatter die down. People are already moving on to the next disaster. But then, a notification pops up. Dongtan Mom is back online, and this time, the post sounds different. He's pleading for help, claiming raiders are at his door. But he's cried wolf too many times.
Nobody responds. He's been branded a liar, and in this world, that's a death sentence. A massive explosion rocks the area near Guangyo. The community finally stops talking and starts wondering if he was telling the truth. I'll keep that in mind. Every explosion is a data point. Every death is a lesson. But right now, I have a more immediate concern: identifying the real threats around my perimeter. I zoom in on the footage from the drone I recovered. The woman with the sniper rifle. She's professional, calm, dangerous. She's not just surviving, she's dominating her sector. It's time to be proactive. Let's go meet the new neighbors and see if they're going to be a problem. A blinding muzzle flash cuts through the dark, signaling the start of another lethal encounter. A high-caliber round screams past, inches from a target's eye with terrifying precision. The impact is instant, dropping the target before they even have a chance to hear the shot. In this wasteland, there are no second chances for those who get caught in the open. I've been monitoring this sector for a while, mapping the dead zones and the kill boxes. This is the territory of my neighbor, a ghost who haunts the ruins of the city. They call her the Mad Sniper, and her vantage point makes her the queen of this concrete jungle. My drone camera finally caught a glimpse of the operator behind a long-range rifle. The patch on her camouflage tells a story of a world that used to be. USFK. She's a former member of the U.S. military forces stationed in Korea before the collapse. When the rifts opened and monsters emerged, the superpowers withdrew to save their own soil. They left behind highly trained soldiers with nothing but their weapons and a desperate will to survive. I prefer to avoid unnecessary conflict with professionals who have nothing left to lose. But if her presence threatens the security of my territory, I have to act before she does. I won't let anyone jeopardize the hard-earned safety of the home I've built. I spent several days observing her patterns, logging her every move through the glass. Even the most disciplined soldier has a routine, a moment where their focus shifts. Through the binoculars, I watched for that one specific gap in her surveillance. There's a window of time each day when the sniping stops, likely when she finally sleeps. That's the only moment I have to approach her stronghold without being picked off. The ground-level entrance is completely sealed off with heavy barricades and debris. Going through the front door would be a suicide mission against an established defender. To enter quietly, I have to find a more tactical point of entry. I decide to infiltrate through the middle floor of the building, bypassing her main defenses. It's a dangerous climb, but it offers the only chance for a successful surprise attack. Every movement has to be silent. One loose stone could alert her to my presence. I pull myself up the skeletal remains of the structure, ignoring the drop below. The wind howls through the empty floors as I reach the interior of the tower. I move through the shadows, my eyes scanning for tripwires and traps. I ascend the stairwell, weapon held tight against my chest. I'm entering her inner sanctum now, the top floor where she keeps watch. Rifle ready. I have to be faster and more decisive than her. I reach the door to the lookout, the final barrier between us. I haven't encountered any other enemies so far, which makes the silence even more tense. I check my corners as I push inside, my senses tuned to the slightest noise. There, in the center of the room, is a sleeping bag laid out among the trash. It looks occupied. I think I've caught her while she's finally succumbed to exhaustion. I move in for the capture, confident that I have the upper hand. Put your gun down. The voice comes from the shadows behind me. I walked right into a decoy. She's speaking English, her tone cold and devoid of any hesitation. I don't turn around yet. I can feel the barrel of her rifle aimed at the back of my head. She noticed my approach days ago and prepared a perfect ambush for an intruder. I'm not bluffing, she says. Drop it now. She made one critical mistake. She chose to talk instead of pulling the trigger immediately. I drop the rifle, but my body is already coiled for a counterstrike. In one fluid, practiced motion, I pivot and strike at her guard. I knock the muzzle of her weapon aside before she can register the movement. The fight is brutal, fast, and entirely focused on ending the threat. I drive a knee into her midsection, knocking the air out of her lungs. She's strong and well-trained, but I have the leverage in this struggle. I pin her to the floor, using my weight to neutralize her ability to fight back. She struggles with a ferocity that surprises me, driven by something more than just ego. I have to subdue her completely before she can reach for another weapon. Sorry about this, I grunt, maintaining my grip. I didn't come here to be a murderer, but I won't let her kill me either. Initially, my plan was just to scout her strength and leave, but during my search of the room, I found what she was really guarding: an armory full of high-grade military hardware and ammunition. If the looters in this city got their hands on this stash, it would be a disaster for everyone. I look down at her. She isn't a mad killer or a raider. She's a soldier trying to survive in a world that has discarded its rules. But then, I hear a soft movement from the far corner of the room. "Stay back!" she screams, her voice cracking with a raw, primal fear. I spin around, drawing my sidearm and aiming at the shadows. A small, delicate figure emerges into the dim moonlight. It's a young girl, wearing a tactical vest and a helmet that's far too big for her. She looks at me with wide, terrified eyes frozen in place. A child, living in the middle of a concrete war zone? Everything clicks into place. The sniper isn't protecting a gang or a cache of loot. "Mama," the girl whispers, her voice barely audible over the wind. She's protecting her daughter. That's why she wouldn't leave this tower. The mother struggles against me again, trying to shield the child with her own body. I thought I used enough force, but the will of a parent is hard to break. I lower my weapon slightly, the aggression leaving my posture. She's not a threat to my home. She's just a survivor in an impossible situation. I watch her carefully as I release my grip. She lunges forward, not to attack me, but to pull the girl into a tight embrace. She could have reached for her rifle on the floor while my back was turned, but she didn't. She chose her daughter's safety over a chance to kill me.
In this jungle, her only mission was to pull the trigger on anything that looked like a threat. I kick her handgun away across the concrete floor to ensure she stays disarmed. "This area is my land," I state firmly, marking my boundaries. "That way is my place. If you cross over, there will be consequences. Understand?" She stares at me, holding the girl close, her eyes searching for any sign of betrayal. "Don't cross over. Just stay here and take care of your kid." I notice a dark stain soaking through her camouflage uniform. She's injured, a deep, untreated wound on her leg that's clearly causing her agony. That's the real reason her movements were so sluggish during our fight. I reach into my pack and pull out a small container of medical supplies. These are antibiotics and anti-inflammatories. They'll save your leg from infection. Consider this as compensation for invading your living space today. She looks at the medicine, then back at me, her expression finally softening. She tries to speak, using broken Korean to ask if I have anything else she needs. In this world,
Survival isn't just about the bullets you fire, but the boundaries you choose to respect.